And we are in the Jew Function again, the Jew Function Talks. How are you, Seth?
I'm great, Leo. Good to see you. Happy to be speaking today with David.
Oh, you already just exposed, revealing the guest right away. That's great. Yes, we have a great guest today, someone that we've been eyeing for a while. But before that, is there anything new in your world across the pond, the big pond?
No, it's well, besides the Roger Waters stuff, but no, it's a quiet time.
That happened in Europe. That was in Europe.
Yeah. No, we're just we're waiting for the next event.
I'm surprised he got a lot of support. I mean, when people said that he was going to get arrested or investigated and all that, and I'm not sure where it stands right this second, but a lot of people, like, we thought people came to hear his music, and then he pulled out the pig with the swastika and everything. But apparently, people came to see that. I think. How does that?
Yeah, when I was in college in the '90s. Bob Marley was huge, but the thing about Bob Marley was that, like, everybody wanted to try weed for the first time when they got to school. So it was like kind of like the music and the drug. He like had a really good selling point, because
right.
If you wanted to anyone who wanted to smoke also could do the Bob Marley thing. I think that Roger Waters actually could be a great marketing ploy. He knows a lot of people are against the Jews. So this is a good way to keep himself very, very relevant.
So if you wanna try some anti-Jewy sentiment, you're not sure you want to commit, but just want to get a few whiffs of that, yeah. You go to Roger Waters' concert, and then if you like it.
Well, I'm saying also that for Roger, this is a great way to keep himself relevant and a great way to, in the 70s their music was anti-establishment, and now it's anti-Jew. It's a great way it's very helpful to have a boogeyman.
Maybe he thinks the Jews are behind the establishment. That's why he went deeper.
Could be.
I don't know.
Actually, he probably does.
He probably does, yeah.
But I think it's also good for his business.
Well, here in Israel, just for those who are interested, well, our guest is in Israel right now, so I'm not innovating anything for him, but the general, generally bad atmosphere is still hanging in the air. People who went out into the streets are still coming out. I don't know what numbers. I'm not following it that closely. I'm lucky enough that I don't live in the center of it, so I don't have to be engaged with that. But there's still a lot of animosity between.
Protests still going on?
There's protests. There's billboards. There's like a lot of. It's like it's gone beyond the judicial reform a long time ago. Now it's basically what we believe in against what you believe in, right? It's one of those rifts. It's polarities. It's a big. It's the word of the year. So there's still a lot of that going on, and now on top of that, there's some growing security tensions. Iran is very close. Is 12 days before a nuke, or 10 days or something like that, and at least in theory, and then the price of a kilo, which is like 2.2 pounds of grapes, is 50 shekels. Where in Europe it's like €2, right? So people are just like fed up, and they want. So I think people are being squeezed. The pressure cooker is sealed and the fire is on, and I'm curious to see where this is going. I mean, I know where it could go, but I hope it goes another way as well. So I don't know. I hope we always bring people to the Jew Function because we hope to get another perspective. Because you and I, we kind of know where this came from, where it's going. We hope Jews are able to somehow reach a level of love above all the craziness, which sometimes happens in bad moments. But we hope we do it before. But I'm not sure right now, and maybe the guest today can shed some light on it.
because we exist, it makes people uncomfortable.
I don't think we can ever solve anti-Semitism.
Maybe there is a reason for anti-Semitism.
We're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't.
The Jew makes people, forces them to be conscious of the other.
I look at anti-Semitism as a virus.
He's the executive director of Israellycool.
Now, we have many enemies that are waiting, licking their chops on the sidelines, and they know that if we're divided, that's when they can come in and maybe stand a chance.
He's a publisher, he's a Middle East analyst, he's a public speaker.
Why is it running rampant amongst these people who claim to be about, Roger Waters, who's this big human rights guy?
David Lange. David.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you for the warm introduction.
Our pleasure. I'm curious, when did you move to Israel?
I moved to Israel in November of 2000, which was right around the time of the Second Intifada.
Right.
It wasn't deliberately that way, but when I think about it, it's sort of fitting that I would sort of go into Israel at that time, given how my Zionism has manifested itself over the years. But there's a complete coincidence that I came at that time, and I certainly wasn't the cause of the Second Intifada. Let's just state that on record.
It was also just a month after I moved to New York. I moved.
So we had like a student exchange program apparently.
Probably maybe that's what caused the Intifada. Yes. The exchange.
Exactly. The energies. The
energies. Yeah. So you live in Israel now, and you have a family here, and is it everything you expected? What's
Oh, good question. Was it what I didn't really come with any expectations. I came on ideology. I also came because I met who was later to become my wife, and she was living here. But the truth is, I kind of sought someone out even when I was in Australia, because I'm from Australia, not South Africa, like some people might think. No one I shall name. And but I sought someone out who lived in Israel, even though I lived in Australia, because of my Zionism. It sort of was, I needed that push up the backside to get here. I had a very cushy job. I worked for an oil company. I could have just stayed there, had a very nice, at least materialistic life, but somewhat of an empty life. I'd just become, I'd gone into religion. I'd become more religious a few years earlier. So it all sort of kind of converged into this perfect storm. And then I came to Israel and I entered into a perfect storm.
Did you stay religious?
Yeah, so I consider myself what's called modern Orthodox. So I'm still, religiously observant, but because I come from a secular background, it really does sort of not color my perspective, but it basically defines or helps define my perspective. So, for instance, even though I believe in Torah and observance, I'm quite socially liberal and tolerant in that sense. So I sort of straddle both worlds, if that makes sense.
A man of bridges.
Yes, and I try to bridge the gaps as well, in my personal life, and also with what I do with my advocacy. I try not to alienate anyone, according to their politics. It's very important to me that we sort of find the common ground. I'm talking now about us as the Jewish people, that we, and also humanity, but there are certain red lines one can't cross, and we can't really find common ground, which I guess we'll discuss if we're going to be talking about Jew hatred.
You kind of went right into it. Usually we
can't help myself. Yeah,
we take half an hour to just
it's okay. We can still chit chat. Yeah, it's all good.
No, I mean, well, so let's put that for a second, because I'm sure it's very, if it came up so quickly, it's probably very close to your heart. Tell us, when did you start your blog, and why was it important to have it?
I started it not because it was important to have it. I actually kind of fell into it accidentally. I know it's going to sound weird, but so I'd made Aliyah in November 2000. I started the blog right around the time of the birth of my second child, which was March 2003. So I actually just celebrated 20 years of Israellycool. And I just started it as, I guess, a kind of a cathartic. It was cathartic for me. What do I mean? So I came to Israel, and you had the second Intifada. The terrorism was running rampant for a number of years back in the early 2000s, if you remember. And I didn't do the army. I wanted to do the army, but by the time I made Aliyah, I'm not going to reveal my age. Let's say I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40, like very close to 50, even though I have my boyish good looks still. And but I was back when I made Aliyah, they didn't want me. I was married, my wife was pregnant. So when I went to the recruitment office, everything was sort of against me. In retrospect, I wish they'd at least recruited me to do maybe IDF spokesperson activities if they didn't need me in combat. But maybe it wasn't as developed back then. I'm not quite sure. But I needed a way to contribute beyond just contributing to the economy and paying my taxes. Because I had this idealism that got me to Israel, if you recall. So I started this blog, frustrated about the terrorism, and I wanted to just write things. But I didn't just write about Israel. I think my first blog post was about cricket. I don't know if either of you know about cricket. Let's just call it baseball's better brother.
Ugly cousin, I was going to say.
No, better, more handsome, sexier cousin. Yeah.
I think better uniform.
I'm sure you might have different views on that, especially our American contingent. And but then what happened was, so I was just writing that occasionally, and it was just me reading it and maybe a few other people, including my parents. And then one day I wrote about the assassination or the neutralization, if we want to be euphemistic, of a Hamas arch-terrorist called Rantizi. And I wrote just something about that. And then I saw that the traffic had spiked. Now, when I say spiked, maybe I got like 20 visitors that day instead of like 5. But, it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
So it was someone in Australia that somehow found my blog. It was on Blogspot back then.
Yeah.
And he had then linked to my blog post. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's a thing? People not just read, but then they link. I know it sounds crazy now because we're all doing it even on social media, but back then it was in its infancy and I didn't even realize. And Nafalas Simon, so the penny dropped that, wait a minute, I can actually do something with this. And then, then you had the second Lebanon war in 2006. I was blogging. Twitter was just sort of coming into its own back then, but people were visiting my blog every day. I was almost like a war profiteer in the sense that my traffic was skyrocketing. I was getting 1,000 plus. I was getting invited onto BBC, and it just sort of took off. I do less of that kind of live blogging now because we have Twitter. Why I don't need to do feel like I have it all on my own shoulders. And now I do more. The blog has over the years kind of evolved. It sort of evolved. So let's say there's a lot more anti-Semitism fighting. I still, blog about Israel, but I try to find angles of stories which have been reported elsewhere, but different angles, or stories that haven't been reported elsewhere. I don't like to just parrot, a Jerusalem Post or a Times of Israel story and leave it at that. I need to find some additional value because there's a whole strategy, over the years I've developed a whole strategy behind the websites. It's not just, writing something and then clicking publish, and there's a whole strategy behind it, trying to influence people more in the center, people that are not necessarily pro-Israel, definitely not people who are anti-Semitic, because, I mostly give up on them, but, not necessarily. It depends. There's different types. We can talk about that. So, but yeah, so I try not to preach to the choir, or, I try to get beyond the echo chamber, and there's a number of ways I try to do that.
What do you want to communicate to them?
No, I want to obviously get the truth across, because I'm a big believer that we do it, even though the narrative or let's say the conflict is not as simple as it's being portrayed. We do have the truth on our side. Does that mean every single thing that's put out, we're always right and and saying the true thing? I mean, when I say we, I mean pro-Israel people. No, and I try to call out also people on our side that are putting out things which are not correct, and I can give some examples of that. But I mean, just in the general sense of us being indigenous to the land. Yes, we are indigenous to the land. Does that mean, and that doesn't mean it's exclusive, meaning I personally believe we can live with any Arabs, Palestinian Arabs that will be willing to live in peace with us. I'm definitely for that. We have a template for that, by the way. People don't realize, people think it's a dream, but when we talk about Israeli Arabs, what are Israeli Arabs? There's no difference between an Israeli Arab and what's called a Palestinian Arab, except for, the willingness to live under our sovereignty, or at least the reality of living under our sovereignty as citizens. As citizens. So, and it can work. It can actually work. So yeah, I try to just get across, and I try to fight all the disinformation about the Jewish state, but also the Jewish people, because they kind of go hand in hand. I believe that they're inextricably linked together. The anti-Zionism and the anti-Semitism, what's called anti-Semitism.
So your goal then is to kind of just set the record straight.
Yeah, it's to set you could say it's to set the record straight, but facts don't work just as dry facts. So you have to make connections, because the other side, the Palestinian Arab side, or let's say the Israel haters, because it's not just the Palestinians, but people that claim to support them.
The Roger Waters of the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You don't want to get me started on Roger Waters, or maybe you do. I don't know. I have a lot to say about that. But they tug at the heartstrings with the images and the emotions, because they don't have the facts. They can say anything, but they can win people over by images, whether doctored or slanted without the context. And the thing is, I believe there are a lot of people out there that are willing to gobble that up. They've already got somewhat of a bias against us, against the Jewish people. I don't mean everyone, but I'm saying there are a lot of people, a disproportionate amount of people, that accept the Palestinian narrative because they already have this, let's say, corrupted notion of Judaism and Jews. And therefore, it's easy for them. Yeah, but they've actually, correct. They use that a lot. That's historical inversion, of course. But they're willing to gobble up all those images and these narratives. So it's not just putting forth the truth, but it's the way that you put forth the truth. So I try to use humor. I try to show the lies of the other side, the hate, the bad behavior.
David, let's say there's an endless, you'll have a long career because there's no shortage of this.
Yeah.
But let's take the Roger Waters thing. So what would be a way that you take, because today was Roger Waters, yesterday it was Rashid Tlaib, AOC,
Tlaib,
Rashid Tlaib, yeah.
And
before
that it was someone
Kanye.
else. So let's just take the Roger Waters one for example. Okay, the guy from Pink Floyd who just was in Germany doing a concert dressed up as a Nazi, shooting a fake gun into the air. So putting a Star of David on a pig and floating.
Well, he didn't actually do that. He hasn't done that for a long time. I just want to put that on the record. There's a lot of people. He definitely did that, and he's definitely a Jew hater. Don't get me wrong. But this is one of the times I've actually corrected people, because there was an old photo going around. So then people kind of conflated. And why is it important to point it out? I'll tell you why. Because the other side, the people that were, let's say, defending Roger Waters and are against us, they used that, let's say, no one was deliberately falsifying things. They just got confused. They conflated an old image. There was a pig there, but it had Elbit on it and other symbols. Elbit being the Israeli armament factory. So because he had a backlash, I think it was around 2013, he took it off because of the backlash behind the Magen David. So he's got the pig, he just doesn't use the Star of David anymore. And the other side was saying, you see how these Zionists are falsely calling him anti-Semitic? He didn't have the pig with the Star of David. Look how you're lying.
Yeah, it was just an innocently dressed up as a Nazi. I mean, that's it.
Oh, well, by the way, the Nazi thing also, you're walking into this because I actually also spoke out against pointing to him dressed up as a Nazi as evidence of his anti-Semitism. Of course, he's not going to do that because he's an anti-Semite. He is an anti-Semite, but he wouldn't announce it by dressing up as a Nazi. It's the whole anti-fascism. It's like the great dictator, right? He's trying to paint himself as an anti-fascist, so it's part of his costume. So don't point to the Nazi costume as proof he's an anti-Semite. Do you know what I mean? It's almost ridiculous. I'm not saying you, I'm saying in general, people are like, and even the German authorities were going to, prosecute him on that basis, which I don't think has any legs, because it's satire. But there are so many receipts. It almost plays into his hands, right? When we point to things which are not 100% true about him, because he does a lot of anti-Semitic and says a lot of anti-Semitic things.
Yeah. Well, but the question is, I I spent a while looking into the whole, what is called today, the new anti-Semitism, the new face of anti-Semitism, the war in the media that basically connects anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, or was hiding behind, behind the political narrative to actually target Jews because they're Jews and not because of the political reasons. And what we're seeing is that it's really the same lady, a different dress. It's simply a new narrative. Like, right, it was initially the religious bent, the Christ killers, and then it was the racial thing, the ethno-racial thing the Nazis used, and now there's a political story. It's just a story that fits with the times, the sentiments, what people are willing to hear and to maybe relate to, and what will get them, as you yourself deal with stories. So it's an easy story to work with. The question is, can we solve it by just tackling this unfolding story, this particular narrative, and how it plays out in the media? Do we even stand a chance? I mean, it sounds like, how many people like you need to be working 24/7 for 10 years to combat? And I don't mean to discourage you. I'm asking an honest question.
Yeah.
Can we? Are we making progress, David? Is maybe a question.
Well, you said, first of all, how do we solve it? So I'm going to be a bit pessimistic here, a lot pessimistic, and say I don't think we can ever solve anti-Semitism.
All right, so the Jew function. A lot of people ask, what is this, and who are we?
Are we anti-Semitic? Are we self-hating Jews? I heard that also.
We're like you. We're concerned citizens. We did our research, hours and hours and hours of research into historic patterns, into Jewish texts, and I mean a lot of Jewish texts, going all the way back to Abraham and other notable sages and Kabbalists, and all the way into the recent era. You'll be surprised how much amazing quotes exist about the need for Jews to unite. So that's why we're doing this podcast. Like us, hit the bell thing on the YouTube so you can get a notification when a new episode is up. Share it far and wide. Find something that you like. YouTube lets you cut clips. Share that clip with a loved one, with a Jewish friend, with a non-Jew who's like bothering you at work about something, and we're like, oh, that clip is exactly what I needed. Share it far and wide. Commenting is a great way to get a conversation going. And let's get back to our guest. Are we making progress, David? Is maybe a question.
Well, you said, first of all, how do we solve it? So I'm going to be a bit pessimistic here, a lot pessimistic, and say I don't think we can ever solve anti-Semitism. And I look at anti-Semitism as a virus, or just illness, but a virus in the sense that it's now mutated. You gave the analogy of the stories and the narrative, but it morphs. It's a virus, so it kind of adapts. It's sort of like if you're taking chemotherapy against cancer, so then the cells can mutate, and that's how the cancer can overpower you. And even if the medicine or the chemo works in the beginning, the cancer can be smart enough to kind of mutate and then go against it, resist. So I see anti-Semitism like that. So I don't have a solution for anti-Semitism, which might sound discouraging from someone that has spent 20 years fighting it and still will fight it till my dying day. But fighting it, I'm not in this fight thinking we can win. I just want to, let's say, make the world a better place, not just for now, but for my children and then onward. And then we'll see what, I look, because I mentioned I'm a religiously observant, so I do believe in God. So that might not be, let's say, a slam dunk argument in terms of how to defeat anti-Semitism. But when you look at anti-Semitism, it's to me, it's almost a metaphysical, irrational thing, right?
Yeah.
It's because if you were to ask me, well, what's the reason for anti-Semitism? I don't actually have a reason. Meaning, if you think it's because Jews are capitalists and rich, but we're also they tackled us, or they hate us because we were part of the communism. And is it because if you say it's because we're not white, right? Because we weren't part of the Aryan race, and we're certainly not seen to be white from the white supremacists. By the other hand, we're white when it comes to the Louis Farrakhan's and the black anti-Semites of the world because of the white privilege structure. So we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. They'll always find a way
Is there
to
anything?
hate us.
Is there any common denominator between all of the things?
Yeah, that we're Jewish. No, really, I'm not being flippant. So even if you go back to the Torah, okay, because when I saw the topic of today, you want to look at all sorts of different angles, including scriptures. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's okay to bring that up.
Leo always
You
kind
look
of
at
prefaces
yeah,
this. We look at sources. Leo, why
yeah,
don't you do your little thing here?
Yeah, no, you were saying it. Our whole thing, our whole research is based
yes,
on these. It stands on three legs, right? Kind of like
yes,
how the world stands on three legs. But our three legs are the words of our sages. Okay, so
yes. I
Torah
saw
and
that. Yes,
yeah, Torah and
yeah,
beyond. Historic patterns, because patterns
yeah,
tend to point to something if they keep
yeah,
repeating, right? And network science, which is a recent addition that
yeah,
is thanks to big computers, big data and supercomputers,
yeah.
you're able to look at the entire
There's enough
systems.
data points that we can start to see patterns emerge.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because you have the big data capabilities. Yeah.
Eh, eh,
So just going to the going to the scripture. So I thought about it because I saw the topic for today and I gave it some thought. So even if you look in the sources, right? So for instance, in the Pesach Haggadah, it says, come and learn something along the lines of come and learn what Lavan, the Aramean, how he
Right,
tried to destroy our father, Yaakov Avinu,
right,
Jacob, our father.
right,
And there were the sages and the Maharal of Prague. He commented on what the sages said. And why was Lavan mentioned in the Pesach Haggadah? And he mentions that it's because Pharaoh, and Lavan, they hated the Jews. I mean, yeah, right, they hated us, right, because we weren't exactly the Jewish people until Mount Sinai. They hated us for no reason. They didn't. If you look at the story of Egypt, we became numerous, but Pharaoh had no other reason to hate us. Maybe he feared us. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of commentaries on that, so maybe there's a fear involved. If you want to get really deep, and this is my belief, I don't have any empirical evidence or big data to back this up. The Jewish people represent ethical monotheism as a concept in the world. So even if you look at, like, for instance, Hitler, maybe deep down, because he stood against the idea, he couldn't accept a God, right? He didn't. There's a lot said about Hitler and religion, which I'm sure you're aware of. It's a bit, let's say, ambiguous. Some people say, yeah, he believed in the church. Others say, well, then he learned to hate the church. And he thought of himself as a God to replace like a God. So God was an inconvenient concept for him. Ethical monotheism with rules. I mean, that's really, Hitler, very inconvenient to Hitler. So that's my belief, that behind it, the Jews represent, because we brought ethical monotheism to the world.
right.
Christianity doesn't stand without Judaism. It
No, of
doesn't.
course, of course.
So that's my personal belief. So
Can you
again,
define what is ethical monotheism?
it's the idea of God and an absolute morality coming from God. So monotheism is the belief in one God, and ethics. So it's not subjective morality. So I could go all over the place with this, because I think we live now with the woke world that we live in. It's all about me, and what I want, and anything goes. If it
Right.
feels good, if I want to identify as this, that should be okay. But that goes to morality as well. So and that's, everything is now kind of conflated, meaning this woke culture. Again, I'm not going to rail against woke culture now on here, but I want to kind of tie it into, like, a lot of the woke culture, anti-Semitism, right? It feeds into that.
Sure.
Let's just say, and which it seems crazy, right? Because if these people who are into human rights, right? They're into human rights and choice and being nice to each other and minorities, the intersectionality, which, by the way, we're excluded from. Why are we excluded from it? And why is the anti-Zionism even within the narrative or the virus of anti-Zion, couched in anti-Zionist terms? Why is it running rampant amongst these people who claim to be about, Roger Waters, who's this big human rights guy? Why? And I believe deep down, again, this is not provable, it's just a belief. You can disagree. I think it goes back the generations. I think we're an inconvenience, we're a thorn in the side of the way that society wants to run itself. And even if a Jew is not religious in any way, shape, or form, Judaism, it's just there. It's I think it's part of in the energy of society, if you know what I mean. The
Yeah,
legacy is there.
So there's an example. There's the concept that you're saying is that, like, because we exist, it makes people uncomfortable because it pushes. It's like, I guess, if the boss isn't around, everyone's kind of, you can relax, and as soon as the boss is coming to the office, everyone's like, get
Exactly, but this is
look
so
busy.
subconscious, right? That's a really good analogy. But I don't think most of the people who have these sentiments towards Jews even realize it. It's so subconscious
or
in
the
many
Jews
cases.
themselves, or that the Jews.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, because most people, I mean, this is not a judgment, but most people do live on autopilot most of the time.
Yeah,
That's just part of the the general condition of things, and the external conditions will either force you to go on even on a deeper auto mode, or it will force you to ask questions. Right now, the automatons are winning the war. There's more of them, but I think some people are starting to ask these questions. And like one of our he wasn't a guest on the show, but we did talk to him in some other constellation. Professor Patterson from the U.S., who was not a Jew and converted, he started studying the history of the Jews, and he converted to Judaism.
Wow.
And now he comes to Israel, he comes to meet Jews, to be around them, and his whole thing. He wrote a book about the metaphysical roots of anti-Semitism, and his whole thing is that the Jew makes people, it forces them to be conscious of the other, and people don't like that. And he's like, his whole thing was like even the morning prayer, when you wake up in the morning, the condition for saying the morning prayer, if you live in a community, is to look out the window and see another person also there. So it's always connected to the other, and that connection to the other is embedded into the core of what a Jew is, and that makes people uncomfortable because I just want to be left alone. As Seth said, the boss is out, I can do whatever I want. I'm not answerable to anyone. But when the
so communal responsibility is one aspect. Yeah. So I think I'm saying a similar thing to the professor. I'm sure he articulates it way better than me. But when you said metaphysical, this is exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to that talk. I'd
love to read it. There's another aspect of anti-Semitism in terms of God and religion that I believe. So that this is one aspect. The other aspect is I think it's a tool that is actually used to keep us going as the Jewish people. It's sort of this resistance, because if we have things too easy, that's when there's assimilation, and that's when we stop caring about each other so much. And it's sort of this opposing force that keeps us in line with ourselves. That also reminds us that we're Jewish, if you understand what I'm getting at.
These two beliefs that you have.
Yes.
Our material also came to these two same conclusions as you through the sources and big data
and historic patterns.
So here you go. I'm not a robot. First of all, I'm a human being. And I probably, let's be honest, I read a lot. Okay. So even if I'm not cognizant of everything, I can't name every article or book that I've read in my life, I'm picking up things along the way. So yeah, maybe I thought of these things. We all have brains.
No, that's okay. Hey,
but I might have picked things up on the way.
By all means, take credit for it. I'm fine. We're fine with it.
But I'm glad I've got sources to back me up. I'm not just saying shit and some of it's sticking.
Yeah, there's a lot of sources.
The two things are that one is that these people cause us to feel, the rest of everyone to feel uncomfortable, because they're pushing us towards something, even if I'm unconscious of it, that I don't like. And the other hand is there's some reason why that hatred also keeps those people, meaning the Jews, also together.
In check.
I mean, we've lasted, our civilization is unprecedented. To have an indigenous people that's still around for thousands of years.
Right.
And I think anti-Semitism, of course, our tradition is our glue, the Masorah, the tradition. But I believe this anti-Semitism it's worked with our tradition, meaning if it was just our tradition, without all the bad stuff going on, maybe we would have, the assimilation would have set in, and then we might have lost things. So there'd be even more of a minority of Jews still keeping things.
So by the way,
if at all.
just to add to your strange findings, not only have we stayed around for so many years, we kept the same number, which is also interesting.
Yeah,
You would
we're
imagine that we
stable.
had, we'll grow, we continue. No, no, no.
Yes.
The relationship between the Jews and the rest of the world stayed almost the same, almost unchanged. And also, what you're saying now kind of contradicts your initial statement. You're like, "Oh, anti-Semitism is a virus; you can't solve it. I'm gonna die fighting it." But here you are saying, if I'm hearing correctly, that maybe there is a reason for anti-Semitism, and maybe it plays an important role in something that we Jews are doing or have to do.
Yeah.
And so it's not
Yeah.
just about we have to fight it because that's our destiny to be those who fight. That's not. I don't
Correct.
think,
Yeah,
I don't think it's
if-
that. I think
Correct.
there's a I think there's a
Yes.
reason why, or rather
Correct.
there's an end goal, because I don't think anything is just happening in nature haphazardly. As you said
Correct.
originally, well, I was from Australia, I could have stayed down there, have a cushy life, but no, something pushed me to go here and us there, and right, like,
Yeah.
it does feel like this is a system with different forces operating through it, and
Yes.
maybe there is an end goal. So now the question is, what do you think could be that end goal? And maybe if you can comment on it through the lens of your experience in Israel, what's happening in Israel today, maybe that has something to do with it as well.
Sure. No, I definitely think that we need to get our own act together. So, and yeah, what's going on in Israel is a good example, because I'm a big believer in unity and the greater good of unity. You don't have to agree, and you can have vigorous debates, but we can't allow this to destroy us as a people. We have many enemies that are willing to, waiting, licking their chops on the sidelines, and they know that if we're divided, that's when they can come in and maybe stand a chance. So we have to get our act together. Now, in terms of it's a good question. Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, if I think that we're doing what is right in God's eyes, again, not probably a popular thing to say, because I understand not everyone's religious, but I'm not necessarily saying everyone has to become religious overnight. I'm talking about derech eretz, treating each other, the basics. Let's treat each other like human beings, even with our diverse. If people want to come to Judaism, it has to be through love. You can't have religious coercion. I'm very much anti, for instance, the rabbinate here, what they do. This is what I mean in my introduction when I said that, well, I'm modern Orthodox, but I have this kind of almost secularist or humanistic viewpoint, because I that's my honest belief. I think that we have to start with love. And I know it sounds all lovey-dovey, and no, I'm talking practically, not like love, let's all hold hands and sing the Kumbaya, but let's treat each other, and you know how hard it is to treat each other nicely?
Maybe
Hard.
maybe one day of the week we could sing, hold hands and sing, just one day.
Well, that's Shabbat. Yeah, Shabbat.
Okay, there you go.
David, the second
yeah.
second part was that maybe this hatred, this anti-Semitism keeps us together. Just riding on what you just said, if we kept ourselves together, if we tried some of this love and unity among us, then what would?
Yeah, so I'm hoping, again, because it's metaphysical.
Would there be for that part of the anti-Semitism?
Yeah, that's why I'm answering the question, how do I think we could end anti-Semitism? But you rightly kind of put me on the spot and said, well, wait a minute. You said there is no solution, and you say, but wait a minute, maybe there is. But again, this isn't like a solution where we're I fight anti-Semitism. What I'm doing, I don't think will end it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to manage it, because anti-Semitism is a danger, even though it might even be a tool that keeps us together. There's that inherent contradiction, isn't there?
No. It's perfect.
No, I understand that. No, I'm not apologizing for it. I'm acknowledging that there is a little contradiction, but it's something I can live with. Meaning, I know that we have to go beyond just fighting it to actually get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's still important to fight it, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous physically. It manifests. Look at the Holocaust, but even what's going on in Israel.
No. There's no question. There's no question here, right?
Yeah, it can.
There's no question here. But I think what you're saying is something that we're struggling to communicate, and that is that fight is not going to solve it. That fight is like Here's some
it's a band-aid solution.
Here's something for the symptoms. Take this, but you have to.
It's like
you have to change your diet. You have to start exercising. You have to do something with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So both are important, but to get to the end goal is going to take generations, and we're so far from it. We're so far from it, and not just the Jews. I think humanity has a part in this as well.
So hold on. So we talked about the second part, which is that the anti-Semitism holds us together, and if we kind of united, then we kind of dealt with that part of the anti-Semitism. So now the first finding you had was that the Jews kind of nudge everybody, right? So what is that nudging that's happening, and where is the nudging? Where are we nudging everyone to? And is there a way to nudge better, more proactively, more comfortably? Can we be way more proactive and way more comfortable, and way more better PR and all of that, and make that first part more smooth?
I don't believe it's our method, meaning it's not that we're bad at marketing. I'm saying it's so subconscious in the psyche of society. It's just our existence. Because you can have someone that's completely secular, doesn't even know anything about their own Judaism, but the fact that they're Jewish, the fact that we exist as an entity in the world.
Let's try and crystallize. What is it that it's not? Don't say ethical monotheism. I don't know what that means, even though you defined it. I want to know in kindergarten language, what are we pushing towards?
I can ask it another way as well. I can ask it another way. Just so, basically, if Jews, for whatever reason, we don't even need to get into why, but for whatever reason, are automatically, right, just by their mere presence, right, in the world, they are forcing people to become conscious of something, of the other. What would be the best example of that beacon, that alarm clock, that the Jew is naturally, right? It's relegated to that role. No matter whatever you do, you are that role. You are that alarm, that conscious alarm clock, right? What would make you the best one at that people will not just try to hide and ignore?
An example from it. Well, people will be happy about it. People will come ask you, how can we do that too?
People are going to thank you for waking them up.
Look at you like you're causing problems.
Yeah. Look, it is such a deep discussion, guys.
Come on.
I'm not an expert on Kabbalah and things like that, but I've read a bit of that as well. Like, we're getting into this territory because there's an energy, like everyone has a soul, okay? All of humanity, not just Jews. So it's almost like everyone has in their soul this subconscious awareness of God, because we all came from God, all of us, all of humanity. So even if you're you're an atheist, okay, you don't believe in God at all, it doesn't change the fact, this is my belief, I can't prove it. But in my belief system, maybe you have a supercomputer that can prove it. But in my belief system, it's almost like they've got a subconscious reaction or awareness, very subconscious awareness that it's really true. So it's in their kishkas, as it were. So it makes them uncomfortable just visually. That doesn't even have to be something that any individual Jew does or says. It's not like, again, our marketing or anything we do. It's just that we're there, and physical manifestation of God in the world. Even if a Jew, so now getting back to how can we be better? Like, I believe, again, it's all mystical. So if we are better as Jews, meaning we get our own shit together, and again, I'm not going to go into Torah and mitzvot. I mean, I do believe eventually maybe that's what we all should be doing. But even let's start with,
want to love you.
Yeah, like let's start, but we won't get to that unless, no, let me finish. We won't get to that unless we're treating each other as Jews better. And we're showing our pride in being Jewish as a people. Because if we're kind of broken down, on one hand, we're this beacon to the world, even if they don't realize it, okay? We make them feel uncomfortable because we're this beacon. On the other hand, we're like this kind of dysfunctional family, as it were, because, the world sees us also, how dysfunctional we're being. So I believe that we need to get our own house in order, and then things will follow from there. Again, I know it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but
no, it's not wishy-washy. No, it's not. It's not wishy-washy. It's great. Our first
It's a little bit
22
wishy-washy.
no. Our first 22 episodes actually prove everything you just said. So
we're ready to sign up and
Oh,
send you a
I'm,
check. We're in.
oh, well, all right, guys. Well,
yeah. The
I didn't
question
watch
is,
all the 22.
no. But there's a catch. We already proved that this is as an idea. It holds what it stands. It stands the test
Oh, you
of
proved
time.
it. I want to see this. Wow.
Yeah. I'll send you all the links. It stands the test of time, test of science. I mean, it's as good as you can get without actually having to prove the existence of the Almighty. Okay, because you can.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do you wake people up to that reality, to that idea, which is already here? It's already it's
Yeah.
how do you do that? And
before
forget
you
about
answer,
the
I'm going to make it even easier. We don't have to.
Because right now you've been making it harder for me.
I've
so
been making it
I'm
harder
glad
up
you're gonna
until
make
now.
it. Yeah, now you're the good cop.
We don't need to deal with 8 billion at first. You want to talk about Kabbalah, for example, there's internality and externality. So there's the nations of the world and Israel. And then within Israel,
Yes.
you don't need to deal with everyone in Israel also, because within Israel, there's also an outer part and an inner part, like the, Cohen, Levi, Israel. For not exactly who's your ancestor. I don't mean like that. I just mean the
Sure.
really, we just need to start with a very small group who's really doing it, and it will, just by the nature of life, it will expand. So now you don't need to deal with 8 billion, David. So
not even 8 million, not even 8
What?
million, not even 8 million. Yeah.
So now that you have an easy problem to solve, now help us. I don't think anyone else is doing what we're doing, and and that's exactly it. Nobody can comprehend what we're talking about. Who would even say that anti-Semites have anything valuable to say without saying we're anti-Semitic or we're self-hating Jews? But there's something that everybody's missing in this whole picture, and the reason why the solution is so close is because we're not waiting for anyone else to change. We're not waiting for the laws to be enacted. We're not waiting for a new politician to get elected. The answer is way closer than everybody thinks.
Like us, hit the bell thing on the YouTube so you can get a notification when a new episode is up. Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guest.
So now you don't need to deal with 8 billion, David. So
not even 8 million, not even 8
What?
million, not even 8 million. Yeah.
So now that you have an easy problem to solve, now help us.
Oh no, you sold it as easier than it really is. Look, I've been thinking about something. You actually had a guest on, a very interesting guest, who
Mr. Gage.
Lucas Gage, yeah. So who I saw that episode because he actually contacted me and said, I name dropped you. Oh, really? He's an interesting character, Lucas. We have quite a history. He was this white supremacist, and let's say I was one of his nemesis. It was a nemesi. I was a nemesis.
The Messiah.
And then he came back, and he blamed me for having the FBI visit his house because of something that I videoed. I really thought he was planning something. Okay, and I had a Zoom call with him. He came back to Twitter. He seemed to change his tune a bit, and we had a Zoom call kind of like this for about an hour and a half.
He told us. Yeah.
So, but why am I bringing this up? Because he still is a bit stuck. Okay, so one of the reasons I haven't even mentioned anything on my website or even done my own video with him is he's still stuck in some of his old ways. Meaning, he now doesn't define himself as a Jew hater, but he's always, every time there's a Jew that does something bad, he's still there to point it out. Disproportionately, he's focusing still. And I said to him, listen, it's all well and good, but why aren't you pointing out every time a Roman Catholic guy steals money? Like, why? And again, I do believe that he's also he is sort of also representing this energy. He's almost like, I don't want to call him a tool. He's a very smart guy. He's got a soul. I love him as a human being, like I love all human beings. But what I mean is, it's not any coincidence there's this kind of random guy out there that's focusing on Jews.
No.
He's tapping into something.
He's feeling it. He's feeling it, David.
And again, I'm not justifying, and I still have a big problem with a lot of what he's tweeting out, and I've told him this. And he points to rabbis. We have some rabbis who I think are a bit woo,
Yeah.
Okay, I prefer the rabbis like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs and these sorts, the real intellectuals that preach love and how to treat, what I've been talking about. But he points to rabbis who says things like the Holocaust, God used it as a way because we were misbehaving, and it's sort of like a way, like a punishment. Okay, we don't want to get into all that, and I definitely don't believe things as simple as that. But Lucas Gage, he will look at these videos of these rabbis saying, but you've got your own rabbis saying stuff like this. So what I'm saying is I can't ignore when someone like Lucas Gage, and just say he's a crazy guy. He's a thinking guy. I think he means well. I'm still there. I said to him, I'm still there if you want to learn more, because on Israel, for instance, he's still pretty unhinged in terms of his views on Israel, which the Jewish state, and he still, as I said, focuses so much on misbehaving Jews. But yeah, there are a lot of misbehaving Jews out there.
No, but he represented, for us also, the feeling we got is that he represented a true sentiment whereby people feel that somehow your people, you're responsible for things. And so at least let's separate the good from the bad and help the good and do away with the bad. Because
and he said something interesting to me. So he said that to me, that he's like, well, we had this whole discussion. I was trying to say, well, why are you focusing on the misbehaving Jews? And he's like, well, maybe you, because I said the misbehaving Jews, people that are either, in bad, stealing money, or, the things we hear.
The Epsteins of the world, you could say that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but, not the, the other pedophiles and bad people of other religions. But yeah, he's like, well, why? He was kind of pointing out the communal responsibility. You as a good Jew, David, I like you, and you're an observant Jew, and I understand what you're saying, but maybe you can call out, you good Jews can call out the bad Jews. Now, I'm thinking, well, what should all non-Jews, good non-Jewish people point out the bad ones? No, but he's tapping into this. Again, it's subconscious. It's this: the Jews have this communal responsibility. It's what you said in the beginning. The professor said, and he knows it without realizing it, meaning it's almost like the people like him do somehow intuit that Jews are communally responsible one for the other.
I'll tell you a secret that don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. We've spoken
just between us.
Just between us three. We've spoken to a lot of anti-Semites, white nationalists, professors, all kinds of people. When you organize it in a very simple way, they get it way quicker than any other Jewish person. Most Jewish people today, they were like, oh, I want nothing to do with it. I'm like everybody else. Leave me alone. I just want. I'm like, but you're arguing with the facts. The world won't leave you alone. You can't just be left alone. If you could, you would have disappeared, 2,000 years ago when you got exiled. Apparently, there's a reason, whatever reason, that the world is looking at you. Jordan Peterson came to Israel and he said, in Jerusalem, he said, for whatever reason, everybody's looking at you. So,
and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Focus on us. But when we talk in these terms, it actually makes a lot more sense out of it, even though we're talking in mystical or metaphysical terms. It's actually more rational in a way.
That's why we have network science. Exactly, to counter the mystical part.
There's more good news here. Not just that we don't have to tell the 8 billion,
8 billion people,
8 million. There's even more good news. And the other good news is this: we're in a network. And the same way that Lucas, for example, is picking up on this somehow through the air, through his intuition.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, we don't need to pick it outside of every anti-Semite's place, because once we also get this connection right, that will also spread through the network in the same way, and we will have advocates all over the world.
By the way, faster. It will move faster because Jews are the hubs of the
same way
network.
It'll awaken in their hearts the same way that the hatred is awakening now.
I like that.
in the same way, and again, not us, there are books written about it by non-Jews about network science and all the stuff that moves through the network. And in the same way that stuff already moves through the network, every, your opinions, your taste, your
They say, like, if your friends are obese, you have a 60% chance of you being obese.
Yeah. We use the example of the cigarette. If your friend's friend lights a cigarette, you suddenly you get a 6% or 2.6% urge to also light a cigarette, even if you're not
right?
All like no
osmosis.
But if when Jews do something, it gets amplified because of our specific role in that network. We're the hubs of the network. We're like the internet providers of the network, the routers, right? The extenders in the network. So stuff is designed to move through us faster, better. I had a friend who I was just telling Seth before our call. I had a friend. She was doing a project. She was interviewing people, not Jews, about their impression of Jews. So all over people from Russia, Germany, Italy, all over the Western world, and they all had. They didn't use the stereotypes, even the good ones. They're more like the personal experiences. Like, oh, I noticed the Jews in my town were always the ones managing things, organizing things, getting things done, facilitate. It's that quality. You can use it to somehow profit yourself, or you can use it to uplift the entire network.
Well, that's why Jews are always, they're very prominent in communism, capital, all these things, because we've got that energy or that role, and we can use it for good.
Exactly.
And of course, not every Jew does. So again, it gets back to, if we can get more Jews, as us as a people, to do the good with their skills and their talents and get more to their role in the world, then in this network, if you look, it's a good way. I like how you're bringing it to a network. It's a good way to look at it. That's kind of really what I'm getting at in different words. So everything that you're saying to me, it does resonate. It's just another way to articulate my similar ideas to what I'm espousing right now. Now, it's important though to mention also, I think, that just even if you were like a hub in this network, performing a role or picking up on the signal, you still bear responsibility, meaning if you're disseminating anti-Semitic views, there's a reason that you're the person doing it. There must be some sort of thing you're doing wrong, or
so
fault in your thinking, that you're the conduit. So you're the kick up our backside, but there's a reason you were picked to be the kick up the backside, which is a fault of yours.
Right. We talked about it. We talked about with Lucas a little bit. It's a big topic. We can't get into it. Maybe we'll have another talk, because it is a huge topic. And our short answer is, well, you need someone to do this work, right? And if you wake up and start asking yourself why, you may be able to come out of it, or you may find yourself like some of the big anti-Semites, the Henry Fords and the Shulgins and these other big guys who wrote books, and they put in their books words encouraging Jews to be that quality. And we have a whole episode on that as well, so it's fascinating. People who you would normally write off as, it's just a rabid anti-Semite. Just wants no. They write carefully about their expectation of this Jewish quality. So it's not as black and white as things usually.
I mean, we can go back to biblical sources as well. So when you see back to Pharaoh,
right?
So when you read the Bible, the Torah, and you see with the plagues, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. So God hardened his heart. I'm reading it and going, that's not fair. That
but what's
Pharaoh
the next line after that? Why does he show?
Pharaoh,
why does he say he hardens his heart? The next line is so that I can show you my signs and wonders. That's true. But what I'm saying is, but Pharaoh got punished and he drowned. If he was just the tool of God, and God, like, that doesn't seem fair. He was like a patsy for God. But no, Pharaoh was misbehaving on his own, and he contributed to that. That's like, at a certain point he had free choice, and then Pharaoh
God
was also
hardened.
part of God.
I think we're all.
I don't believe that, but
we all kind of, I think I get a feeling we're all being played by God, and I also get a feeling that this this physical existence is not the end all be all of things.
I definitely believe that. Yeah.
And so when you start to look at that, you're like, oh, maybe you could be more forgiving. It's like maybe you are. I mean, scientists talk about a simulation, an imagination. People say we were as dreamers. There's all kinds of descriptions of those things. Sadly, we won't have time to get into it because we have to wrap up. But before, I mean, I will post in the chat a small quote that I would love for you to read. It was written by Yehuda Ashlag Baal HaSulam, who wrote the commentary in the Book of Zohar, a great Kabbalist, and he kind of describes these ideas, from his perspective. But before that, maybe you can tell us what you wish, like in your blog, what do you wish the best blog post that you can write about? Like if you could imagine the best post ever, what would that be?
Well, actually, let's just say best is a loaded term, but I've let's say the ones that I want to write more about, okay, and I've already written two, where anti-Semites, people that were disseminating vile anti-Semitism, repudiated their anti-Semitism. Now, I believed before that it's impossible. Now, I believe there are different types of, I don't want to say anti-Semites, let's say people disseminating Jew hatred. There are people that are real, like these hardcore Jew haters, that it's really hard to get through to them because they're just so set in their ways. But there's also people that don't really understand. You've got the people that, we'll talk about the Rothschilds without a clue that that's a kind of a dog whistle. We sort of, us, right? The people in the know that follow all the anti-Semitic dog whistles and have our finger on the pulse. We understand, right? But we shouldn't always assume that everyone does. So you have Nick Cannon, for example, right?
Yeah.
You remember Nick Cannon?
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he was talking, he's espousing sort of like Nation of Islam, Black Hebrew, Israelite stuff on one of his podcasts. And then people came, I also went hard on him. And then I saw he really was contrite. You could see he was genuine. Years later, he's still talking with the ADL, doing podcasts with, what's his name from the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt. And you see, wait a minute, this was a guy years ago, he was saying some pretty bad stuff that we could all jump on him and say, you're an anti-Semite. But even back then, I was like, let's give him a chance. Meaning, even though I'm very hard against anti-Semites, I expose, ridicule them, as you know. Anyone familiar with my work, I go after them. I try to make life as uncomfortable for them as possible. But if they show some sort of, like with Lucas, I'm also willing to hear you out. And it's happened twice. I'm not including Lucas, because Lucas, if you're watching, you still have a way to go. But we can still be, friendly. I think that so there were these two people. One that had even put on his Facebook where he was spreading all this anti-Semitic stuff. He wrote to me and he said, "Listen, I didn't realize I went down this rabbit hole. I started with like Ayn Rand, who was Jewish, by the way, and somehow got from that into this whole anti-Semitic matrix and found it himself there and hard to extricate himself. But when he saw my post and he realized the hurt his words and his posts were causing, look, you could argue, well, wait a minute, maybe he was scared that he was gonna, set his career. But I really did have a back and forth with him, and I believe he was genuine. And I said, prove that you're genuine, write in a public post, you repudiate, and he did. He actually did do that. So that's one example of a post I want to do more of. And another one is a guy in Australia that had said some anti-Semitic things about our Jewish treasurer of the time. And then years later, he contacted me and we did a Zoom call and he was crying. And he said he wants to help with the fight with anti-Semitism. He was just angry at this guy. He was just trying to hurt him. He reached out to rabbis and he was crying. I mean, that I'm a pretty good judge of character. He's either the world's best actor or he was really contrite. I think he was the latter.
And what about a post where a Haredi Jew and Israeli startup CEO hug in the public square and they sit together?
I like that. I like all that stuff. But we see it.
Will it happen?
We live in Israel. Yeah, it can happen. I've seen stuff like for sure. Okay. But no, the anti-Semite, the Jew haters that because I'm so obsessed in this fight against Jew hatred, I'd say that I want more of those posts where someone that I had no idea, like Lucas is a work in progress. If he ends up becoming an advocate for Israel and the Jewish people, that would be the post I want to write.
Okay.
David, we have, I think we have, well, we discovered a lot of things in common here, but I also value that we can bang up against each other a little bit and
oh yeah, absolutely, bring it on
and help each other sharpen, because we share a similar goal. We want there to be peace. We want life to be good, but nobody can do it by themselves. It has to be. We're a nation. It's only going to work as a nation, and the nation, like a family, is made up of all these different parts. I'm hoping that we'll be able to speak to you again. And what we would like to do at some point in the future is get a bunch of Jews together who have very different opinions, different, different sides.
That shouldn't be too hard.
Shouldn't be too hard.
Two Jews, three opinions. Yes.
But to see if from there we can find what is this common thing that is more important to us than all of our differences. And we hope you will join us in our circle when we get there.
That sounds fantastic. And you just reminded me also of something I said to Lucas, and I believe is that we connect with people with similar values. So this, let's say, not just Jews and us meeting, but I find that I have an affinity towards many non-Jews who have similar values to me, even over many fellow Jews. I have to admit that, with similar values. And there are a lot. So I think we have to bring, let's say, yes, get together as Jews with different opinions, but we have to find our common values. Let's put it that way, as Jewish people, but also as humanity. And we have to find the common ground. So the first step, yes, within the Jewish, this inner circle, as you mentioned earlier, but then, to go to the outer circle with humanity. And I think it's value driven. I think we speak in values.
Nice. So that's a good advice. And here's a quote for you. Give it a read, and then we'll close.
Okay, I have to go into the chat. Let's have a look.
Yeah.
Should I read it out, or does everyone see it?
No, read it out loud.
All right. There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples. Oh my God, I was actually going to quote this today. You read my mind. It's the network. It's the hive mind. Haman said that in his view, we will succeed in destroying the Jews because they are separated from one another. Hence, our power against them will certainly prevail, as this caused a separation between man and the Creator. And the Creator will not help them anyway, since they're separated from him. This is why Mordecai went to correct that flaw, as it is explained in the verse. The Jews gathered, etc., to gather and to stand up for their lives. This means that they saved themselves by uniting. Yeah. So I was aware of that. So I guess I am getting my ideas. I've been found out. I'm a fraud. I get my ideas from these are all things that I believe and I get from all sorts of sources, and it just sort of makes sense to me. It's intuitive to me, at least. That's that's a great quote.
I hope more people find that intuition in them, because we also believe that a lot of people have that. It just needs to be awakened. So we start with those who are closer to waking up, and then we can pick up the rest. David Lange, thank you so much for being here with us. Despite a lot of technical difficulties, we prevailed, we united, and we managed to get you on air. And we'd love to have you again, maybe on the Jew Function, maybe on that panel that Seth mentioned. And of course, if anyone wants to say anything, please like, share, and comment on this talk. And this is the Jew Function. We'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care, David. Have a great evening.
Bye, you too. Great discussion, guys. Really enjoyable.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.